take me inside the boardroom or the executive room. When this pandemic was getting real in March, and all these restrictions or lockdowns or whatever you want to call them, Mr. Anderson, was coming into place. Did you yourself and your high level team have questions about whether or not the pipeline would be full, whether or not you'd be able to
Mhm.
continue to meet the construction timelines of the Trans Mountain expansion? I fully understand the pipeline is full and you're on track for what I've been hearing. But at that moment, what were you thinking?
Yeah, it's a great question because, like anybody in our situation, we ran scenarios. We ran scenarios of, what if we became a place of COVID infection? What if the refined product barrels, the gasoline into the lower mainland stops flowing because nobody's driving? And so what if things occur that draw away from kind of the great progress we're making? We ran scenarios, and so we could understand better. I think most importantly how important it was going to be safe. David, that became the mantra, is being safe, because not running at full capacity or having the project stalled or shut down for some reason was not obviously desirable. But we ran scenarios and we understood what a pandemic like this could mean to a workforce as large as ours. So it was a really huge effort over a very short period of time. My board struck a COVID committee that we meet with. Initially, we were meeting with them almost weekly. Now I'm meeting with them monthly to update them on the measures, on the progress, on the state of infections, etc. So the board's been very actively involved, and as I said, we've been reporting out regularly on our progress, and we've been sharing reports across industry. That's one of the important things, is not everybody knew quite what to do. So as an industry, as businesses in Alberta, we shared what we were doing. We shared how we were doing it. We learned what others were doing. So there were many facets of intelligence that we accumulated in order to stay safe. But it was certainly a dynamic situation, and continues to be.
So, you know, did you have any doubts in the initial stages that the pipeline might not be as full,
Oh,
or yeah, like
most
tell
certainly.
me, yeah.
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, the pipeline today uh, doesn't have firm contracts. So it's a 300,000 barrel a day pipeline today. I've got 50,000 that are firm contracts that are targeted towards our dock. But it's largely a month to month exercise of shippers asking for space and us allocating that space. Now, we've had the benefit since 2008 of being full every single day since 2008. The pipe's been full, and we've had more demand than availability. But we certainly looked at scenarios that would have had us not full, and what the economic impact of that may or may not be. But to our pleasure, and really to prove the diversity and versatility of the pipeline, we have remained full. In fact, as we reported in August, we had weeks and months in July and August where we moved record volumes. We moved more barrels in July than we've ever moved before. So it was quite an amazing, um, quite an impressive, I think, uh, reflection on the flexibility of this line and the markets we serve and the diverse markets. And we're probably the only pipeline in North America that stayed full.
So your doubts were proven wrong.
They were. I fully expected to lose some volume.
Wanted to ask you about a couple of other things. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the viability of the expansion going forward. We saw that report from the Canadian Energy Regulator that was looking at the forecast with expected production, if I'm remembering it correctly, and pipeline capacity. And it seems to be indicating that, if Trans Mountain expansion, Keystone, and some other lines come online, we will have too much pipeline capacity. and some of these pipelines won't be full. Did you want to respond to that in any way?
Yeah, yeah, very, very much so. I do. And in fact, we've recently written a piece that we put on our website just in the last couple of days to provide a little bit more market insight into the long-term commercial viability of this expansion. I spoke at the Vancouver Board of Trade earlier this week on the subject, and it is an important topic because what the CER report told us and told the market broadly was that under differing scenarios, under an existing production scenario, all the pipes are required. Under a scenario where you've got a full global adoption of the Paris Accord and we're marching towards net zero by 2050, there could be excess pipe capacity in the system. The point I would make is a couple fold. One is, firstly, as we talked earlier, the pipe's been full all year in a period of depressed prices and lower demand. So that tells us that the pipe and the markets we're serving are richly sought after by our shippers. So we think we've got a favorable position in terms of pipe location. Secondly, I've got 20-year contracts for 80% of that space, and those are firm. So 80% of the pipe, 708,000 barrels a day, are committed to. And if I just assume that's all that moves, and I don't move any more barrels over and above that, I'm going to be just fine commercially and economically. Our cash flow will go from $185 million a year to $1.3 billion at least, and that will be a very attractive cash flow for a future investor for this asset. And the last point I'd make, I think, is a broader one, which is, and it's the point I made earlier this week. You don't build infrastructure systems just to meet the minimum production. In other words, you don't build a road system for so that it's full and every road's full in all directions. You must have excess capacity. Like, you must have more capacity than the existing or projected production, because markets change and there's upsets in varying places, and you need to provide flexibility for the shipper to change direction of a barrel, change a commodity they might want to move into the market. So you always must have a bit of excess capacity in the system. And I don't think the CER was saying the pipes weren't needed. I think they were just adding up math. And I would argue you always have to have excess pipe capacity. We've been working now for more than a decade at a place where the Canadian barrel has not been able to get out because there's not enough capacity, and that's resulted in depressed prices and not world pricing for their commodities. And we're looking to break that existing situation, give them the capacity with Keystone XL, with Line 3, more capacity into more markets, provides them with a higher value for their product and a benefit to all Canadians. So I think there's this notion that you build just enough. Well, you can never build just enough. You always have to build a bit more to allow for flexibility.
Do you think Keystone XL is a certainty? We've heard the Biden administration make its comments, and what do you think that means for Trans Mountain and its future?
Yeah, I don't think there is a material direct effect of Keystone XL or Line 3 on Trans Mountain. And I say that because we've got the long-term contracts. They're solid for 20 years. We access different markets. We're the only pipe that's going to Tidewater to access global markets. We're the only pipeline that's going to take volumes to Southeast Asia. So I think the markets we're serving are different, and I think the attractiveness of those markets is what our shippers are looking for. What happens to Keystone XL? I stopped a long time ago trying to predict politics. It's been one of the chapters we've been in and out of for years. Certainly the commercial logic and the for Keystone XL exists, and it has for some time. The extent to which it gets wrapped up in politics, I'll let TC Energy try and solve. But it's we support all pipes. As I said before, we have to build a system that has more capacity than just the existing production, and we need to give our customers the opportunity to get the highest value for their barrel, and that's good for Canadians. Even if there isn't significant upstream new investment in more production, I still believe our pipeline is going to be full. I still believe its commercial viability is going to be maintained, and the variable that changes will be that producer will get a higher price for the barrel, and that's good for Canadians broadly. Those barrels are going to be consumed. The global appetite for oil, is still going to exist for a good period of time, and we believe that the country that should be serving that demand should be Canada. The democratically produced, socially responsible barrel that's produced in Canada should be high on the list of available barrels for the world to consume, and our project helps accomplish that.
All the major court and regulatory challenges have passed. Is the pipeline de-risked, would you say?
That's a great question, and yes, all of the major regulatory and legal challenges are behind us. We've been through years of that, and now it's about construction. Construction always brings risks. As soon as you start, turning soil and clearing right of way, there's new risks that you encounter. Those are risks that we believe we can manage. But I believe the macro political, regulatory, and legal risks are largely behind us now. So to that extent, I think there's a significant de-risking that's occurred. We're now into a chapter of construction risk and execution risk, and those are long and many and varied, but they're the risks that we plan for. That's why I have an army of engineers and construction contractors ready to take on those challenges.
So, is it de-risked to the point where it can go back into private hands?
The government will have to decide that, and we talk about it quite regularly. I don't think we're quite there yet. I would say that I'm not working fully in the Fraser Valley or in Greater Vancouver yet. That won't occur till next summer. We've still got some routing conclusions to reach in a couple of places. So there still are a few steps in the road that I'd like to see behind us, and particularly that's going to be getting to the point where we're constructing fully in all areas, and that won't be until next spring and summer. So I think another chapter starts next summer when we're working essentially everywhere and really getting lots of pipe in the ground. And I think that with Canada, we'll look at the situation then.
So the rerouting challenge, one of those is the cold water aquifer, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rerouting.
Yeah. There's a routing in and around Coldwater. We've now reached agreement with the band on a route that they support. We filed that with the regulator about a month ago. So we have now reached a satisfactory conclusion with Coldwater on a route around their community and through the Coldwater Valley. So that was a long time coming, but we've now solved for that route, and it's before the regulator for consideration. And we work very, very hard to ensure we're leaving a legacy for Indigenous communities. I've now got about 10% of the workforce are Indigenous individuals. We've issued about $1 billion of contracts to Indigenous-based companies and joint ventures. We're working very hard with dozens of communities to hire and train and help educate some of their members so they can work on the project. So that's one of the real legacies that sit underneath the surface of an actual pipeline construction that we think are going to be one of the long-standing benefits to those communities. And we're seeing those communities, if you like, embrace the opportunity, and that's hugely rewarding to see.
At that meeting to the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, I believe, you kept on
Yep.
mentioning that you're a book that could be in the
Yeah.
works
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
Are you going to be staying on until the pipeline's built?
That's my plan. Yep.
It sounded like
It,
you were. It
you
sounded
know,
like you were
no,
planning
it's
retirement there, thinking about what
yeah.
you're going to be
Well,
doing.
I planned retirement a long time ago. It didn't quite happen. This has been a journey, but no, this is too important to depart before it's done. We've got a couple of years left of the final heavy lifting to get it completed, and I'll be around at the end.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate you making the time and for giving me a bit of
No
extra
problem.
time.